Labiotech was in Malmö, Sweden recently for NLS Days, where the NLS stands for Nordic Life Science. It's an opportunity for regional companies to come together and meet, although it's now definitely become more of an international event. It was also an opportunity for us to talk to some of the companies in attendance.
So hi Jim, I'm Richard, I'm the CEO of IRLAB. We're a Gothenburg-based biotech company focused on developing new innovative treatments for Parkinson's disease. I've only been with the company a few months, so I relocated to Gothenburg and just starting out. Maybe the first thing is, what impressed me about the company, why was I intrigued to join the company? And it's really the deep and profound science. Based on Nobel Prize winning research going back 40 years. The scientists have been working on this for decades, and they really do understand the etiology or the causes of this neurodegeneration that manifests itself as Parkinson's disease. With that knowledge, we've developed a research tool so that we can really develop and discover and develop new molecules, brand new molecules that really fit the biology of the disease. Probably best exemplified by the fact that the World Health Organization has had to identify whole new stems for the nomenclature of the names of the drugs of our drugs, which I think is really the best way of illustrating how innovative our drug discovery is. With Parkinson's disease, again, as a point of interest, is there's been no real progress in the treatment of Parkinson's disease for 50, 60 years. The standard of care drug is the same as they were teaching us at university 30 years ago, which is levodopa. The whole mechanism of dopamine and how that controls movement in the brain was discovered by Professor Arvid Carlsson in Gothenburg, for which he got a Nobel Prize. The trouble with levodopa is that it works quite well for a while. You need to take it 6, 8, 10 times a day, but you actually get excessive dopamine, and that leads to these dyskinesias. And we've all seen Parkinson's patients with these shakes. That's so-called bad on time. You're getting some dopamine activity, some motor activity from the levodopa, but you're getting too much. You've lost control of your motor function. We've understood why that occurs, and we've developed our lead program called mesdopetam, which specifically counteracts that levodopa-induced dyskinesia. That's now completed the recruitment in a phase 2b study, 154 patients, and we anticipate top-line data at the end of the year. One of the other most troublesome consequences of Parkinson's disease is loss of balance and falls. You can imagine that's going to be a real impact for the Parkinson's patients and also their caregiver. And patients that do fall over, they go into hospital. Typically the health economic burden is in excess of $30,000 for patients if they go into hospital. All caused by loss of dopamine, loss of motor control, loss of balance and falls. Our second program, pirepemat, is specifically designed to address the loss of balance and reduce the number of falls. Very exciting early clinical data, 54% reduction in the falls frequency of patients taking our drug, and that's really compelled us to move into a phase 2b study. Again, about 160 patients. We should have readout at the end of next year, but the ambition there is really to see that we can improve the quality of life and the safety of Parkinson's patients by reducing the falls frequency. The other interesting readout there, of course, was also caregiver stress. You can imagine if you're a caregiver of a Parkinson's patient, your number one concern is going to be the patient falling over and hurting themselves. If that can be halved or reduced, then you're going to reduce the caregiver stress significantly. So that's our second program. But I'm just talking about the motor functions, motor consequences, motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease at the moment. There's also non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease that are equally troublesome. Things like psychosis, anxiety, decision-making, memory, apathy, hallucinations. These non-motor function symptoms of Parkinson's disease are also quite troublesome for the patients and their caregivers. So we've developed 2 preclinical programs now to address these non-motor symptoms, non-motor function symptoms of Parkinson's disease, both of which are in late preclinical stage and should enter the clinic next year. And then our last program that I think is really exciting is still in the discovery phase, and that's to produce a whole new way of treating Parkinson's disease, just a one-a-day treatment that to control the disease, control the motor functions and the non-motor functions without any of these troublesome side effects. So we hope to nominate a clinical candidate at the end of this year and take that into the clinic probably in 2024. So really exciting set of data on the horizon. The lead program has been partnered with Ipsen. Ipsen has the opportunity then to take forward mesdopetam into phase 3 studies and to commercialise it on a global basis. So fingers crossed we'll have good data at the end of the year, and they'll take that forward into late stage development and commercialisation.
Interesting. So it has a personal meaning for me because my mum had Parkinson's, so I was a caregiver for her for several years. But because I think a lot of people, when you talk about Parkinson's and you mention the tremors and you mention the falls, quite often a cause of death with Parkinson's isn't from the Parkinson's itself. It's either because of falls or because they can't cope with things like pneumonia.
Yeah, exactly.
My mum got a lot of bad breathing problems because of Parkinson's. So it's not just having Parkinson's; it's all of the complications.
No, exactly right. No, I mean it's a neurodegenerative disease. So last 20 years, people, we talk about patients with Parkinson's, but maybe the correct way is to talk about people that are living with Parkinson's disease for 20 plus years. There's no cure. It's a neurodegenerative disease. So you're getting a loss of brain cells that produce dopamine, and as that continues, then you get less and less dopamine, more and more symptoms, and it's a more and more complexity in managing it. So it's a real problem. And the good thing is that we understand some of the root causes. We can develop unique molecules that address these different symptoms along the journey, and so fingers crossed we're going to have some good data to help these patients.
Sure. And what you're working on, you're talking about alleviating the symptoms of the condition. Is that working towards curing, or just to make the standard of life better?
Cure's a bit of a panacea. I mean, we hope in many ways you could say that our research program, a whole new way of treating the disease, could be considered as a cure if you take a 1-a-day pill and the disease just doesn't progress because it's able to replace the dopamine and you maintain the level of dopamine within the brain. That potentially could be regarded as a cure, but let's wait and see with that. It's a neurodegenerative disease, so and like so many systems in biology that I've seen through my career, there's so much redundancy within biology, within our bodies. It's really quite impressive. So it's not until 80% of the neurons that produce dopamine have died, are no longer there, that you actually get such a drop in dopamine that you start to see the symptoms. And then by which time it's difficult to cure. I mean, so the whole idea of cell therapy may be replacing those cells. The idea of implanting neurons into the brain is a little bit space age still. So I think we need to concentrate on what we're trying to do, which is replace the dopamine, which is the key neurotransmitter that otherwise would be missing. But you can hope that a 1-a-day pill would cure it, or at least prevent the symptoms from prevailing.
Absolutely.